This week on the Watchman, welcome to Syria. We are on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights, literally just footsteps away from the world's bloodiest conflict in Syria. And today, top Middle East expert Avi Melamed joins us to break down what Iran, Hezbollah, ISIS, Vladimir Putin's Russia, and some of the world's worst actors are doing just over my shoulder here in Syria. Not only that, how it affects the Middle East, Israel, America, and you sitting there at home. This is the kind of analysis, folks, that you will not see anywhere else, but you'll see it today on the Syrian border, only with Christians United for Israel, and only right here on TBN. Well, Avi, we are at one of the most strategic and violent crossroads in the entire Middle East right now. Tell our viewers where we are and why it's so important.
We are located on a place called Tel Saki. It's in the center part of the Israeli part of the Golan Heights, and we are looking that direction, which is to the east. And actually, Eric, what you see in front of you is part of the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, which is a stage for a massive battles that has been going on in Syria for the last couple of years.
Tell us some of the major players we have right now, a stone's throw from where we're standing, who are slugging it out, enemies not only of Israel, but of America and the West.
Let us talk first about specifically the district of Daraa that we see right in front of us. 2 out of the 3 major developments happens right now in that district that you see right in front of you. One of the development is the fact that there are pockets right in front of you in a distance of 3, 4, 5, 6 miles away from where we are right now. There are pockets of ISIS.
So, Avi, you're saying ISIS is here, just a few miles away from where we're standing right now, a short distance. It's no wonder that over your shoulder, as we see, we have UN observers who are looking out over this district in Syria. So pockets of ISIS. Avi, tell us who they are and what they're doing here.
ISIS factors in that specific region, Daraa, which borders both Israel as well as Jordan.
Right.
We estimate their numbers in a couple of hundreds militants at the most. It is known under the name of Jaish Khalid ben al-Walid, the army of Khalid ben al-Walid. And they are scattered in some towns 3 miles away from here, very close to the Israeli-Syrian ceasefire line.
Yeah.
This is one factor that is located on the ground, ISIS. The second factor, a major one, is what is known as the Free Syrian Army.
Yes.
This is one of the major Syrian rebel bodies that was already formed back in the middle of 2011.
Before we continue here, lay out the major players here in Syria that everyone needs to know about.
Okay, Eric, it's a great question. Let us start with something very significant. The war in Syria that is portrayed quite often as a civil war is not a civil war, it's way beyond. Because right now what you have in Syria are Iranian forces, Shiite militias, Hezbollah from Lebanon, Iraqi Shiite militias, Afghan Shiite militias, Pakistani Shiite militias that are backed by the Iranians occupying parts of Syria. We have the Syrian forces, of course, of Assad. We have Sunni Syrians that are formed in different rebels groups. We have non-Syrian Sunni militants from Tunisia, Algeria, Sudan,
France,
Egypt,
Britain,
wherever.
Germany, right?
Also here operating in Syria.
The foreign fighters.
And we have US forces in the northern part of Syria engaged now in the fight against the stronghold of ISIS. And we have Russian forces in Syria.
Oh, and the Turks as well, right?
And the Turks as well, by the way.
So this is not much going on here in Syria.
So describing it as a civil war is an understatement of the year, sort of speaking. It's way beyond the civil war. It has to be understood as such, which has, of course, global ramifications.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all that later in the show, Avi, the end game, everything else. But man, some of the world's worst actors right here, a few miles from where we're standing right now. Before we go to our next location here in the Golan along Syria's border, you mentioned ISIS. Now everyone at home, an American audience, says ISIS, and their sensors go up. Tell us a little bit more about what ISIS is doing here 4 or 5 miles from where we're standing, what their goals are here.
ISIS here does not form a strategic threat to the state of Israel. However, it forms a threat on the ground. The Jordanians are very much disturbed with the presence of ISIS because one of the most highest objective of ISIS is to topple down the Jordan monarchy.
Wow, King Abdullah, who was just in Washington just recently meeting with President Trump.
Correct.
And who maintains a peace treaty with Israel. We have American, British, German, Swedish, French fighters leaving to join ISIS. Then they return home. These are Western passport holders. When they come back, all bets are off. The Jordanians have the same concern. And by the way, folks, when those Arabic terms roll off Avi's tongue, know that he's a fluent Arabic speaker. As you can tell, he's one of the world's top experts on this subject matter. Avi, what a start. Where are we going next here in the Golan?
Well, actually, Eric, we are going to move north, and we will looking at the other district that I mentioned before, the Kunitra district.
Which is a hot district.
Which is a hot spot, a hot district. And in that specific district, we will talk about the third geostrategic development, which is enormously significant in the context of the war in Syria, and that is the presence of Iranian armed forces.
Wow. We go from ISIS to Iran, and I'm guessing Hezbollah. The plot only thickens here in the Golan Heights, a crossroads in the world today of this earth-shaking conflict, quite literally. Avi, let's go. Lead the way.
Looking to the east, what we see in front of us is part of the district of Kunitra. You may remember we started the day talking about the district of Daraa in the south.
Yes.
Now this is the district of Kunitra. And right in front of you, you see the major town in the district of Kunitra, a town called the Ba'ath Khan el-Arnabe city, which is controlled by Assad.
It's a big city.
It's a big city.
Yeah.
It's a big city. It sits actually on a highway that connects all the way up, going up to the northeast, straight to the capital of Syria, Damascus, which...
That's 20 miles from here, Damascus?
20 miles away from here. That's it.
Also the scene of some major fighting, obviously.
Also the scene of major fighting.
So right now, Avi, you said this town here, Ba'ath, is controlled by Assad, the Assad regime, which means it's also controlled by...
The Iranians. You have an Iranian's presence over there. You have Hezbollah's. The Lebanese Shiite militias forces also scattered over there. And the amazing thing, Eric, is that in between us and that city, in the middle of the field, you may be able to see the line of the Israeli-Syrian fence. So everything between the fence to the city is controlled by the Syrian rebels.
You're telling us now these are Sunni radical Islamic rebels right here.
These are Sunni Islamist affiliated factors. Some of them are more radical, some of them are relatively less radical, but they are Islamist affiliated. And the interesting thing is that as they are trying to connect to their brothers, the rebels in the area of Damascus, they need to bypass the corridor that is controlled by the Assad and the Iranians through the city of Khan el-Arnabe. So what they did, they paved a bypassing road that goes in between us, in between the fence and between the city, and goes all the way up straight northeast, basically supposed to connect the rebels, the Syrian rebels, all the way from the south with the brothers in the outskirts of Damascus. The village, the town that you see over there, is a town called Jobt al-Khashab, which is predominantly Sunni, and it's controlled by the rebels. So it's a very significant milestone or a point on this corridor that the rebels are trying to pave, connecting the region of Kunitra with their brothers in the outskirts of Damascus.
So they want to get from Kunitra to connect with their fellow brothers, as you said, up in Damascus, about 20 miles from here, Avi. What's standing in their way? Why are they unable to do that?
Excellent question. Because right beyond that village, Jobt al-Khashab, a Sunni predominantly village, there is a major Druze Syrian village called Khader that literally stands on the way between the rebels and their brothers in the outskirts of Damascus.
And that
That
Druze
village, that Druze village of Khader is controlled by Assad and the Hezbollah.
Wow. And it seems like from listening to you, it's kind of tit for tat. Maybe the rebels will seize a town, Assad and the Iranians will seize it back, and then it's all over again. This is constantly, these villages and towns are changing hands, and there's constant fighting. Up next, could the Golan Heights become Iran's next terror base against Israel? Find out after the break. America has elected a new president. New faces are on Capitol Hill. And as the largest pro-Israel organization in America, CUFI has the power to influence the U.S. relationship with Israel. But we need you to come to Washington, D.C. and speak directly to your elected leaders. We need your voice to defend Israel. Join us at CUFI's Washington, D.C. Summit on July 17th and 18th for the beginning of a bold new chapter in history and help us celebrate Jerusalem's 50-year Jubilee. Bring your whole family to this summit and instill a biblical love for Israel in the hearts of your children. We have 2 days of fun programs for CUFI kids, ages 5 to 10, and CUFI youth, ages 11 to 15. Make standing up for Israel a family tradition. And come early on Sunday, July 16th to be part of a special time of prayer and teaching with the Daughters for Zion. More about the geography and the topography of the Golan and why it is so crucial, this vantage point where we are standing right now.
Well, the Golan Heights is a volcanic plateau, something like 45 miles long, starting in the south and going all the way up to the north. In its widest part, the Golan Heights is about 20 miles wide. In its narrowest part, it's about 6 miles. And actually, the western part of the Golan is just overlooking deep into the Israeli territory of the Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, and other places. Reminding you, us all, that area used to be controlled by the Syrians up until 1967.
Fascinating that this was not Israeli territory not so long ago, but Avi, now it is Israeli territory.
Correct.
And tell us real quick why it's so important that Israel maintains this territory, because over the years, some in the international community have said, hey, Israel, give the Golan back to Syria. Give it up. You don't need it anymore.
Here is the answer, Eric. If you will walk down here and you will reach to the fence, which is about less than half a mile away from here, and once you cross the fence and you will start walking all the way eastwards, crossing through Syria, crossing through Iraq until you reach the Iranian borders, you are crossing through an area of dozens and dozens of millions of people that have two things in common as of today. One, they are butchering each other, and two, all of them are very hostile to the state of Israel.
And the state of America, the United States.
Among other things.
Yeah.
So that is the answer for the reason why is it so significant that Israel will maintain a presence in the Golan Heights that is really a buffer zone.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of the fence, as I said before, all you could see are people that in a different level of intensity are very hostile to the state of Israel.
Yeah, Avi, this is a buffer. And by the way, just with a strategic, great vantage point. Look, we're on the mountains here. And whoever controls this area can see down at their enemy. So if the Syrians or Iran or Islamist rebels control the Golan, they're looking down at Israel. It's easy pickings, easy target. Israel controls this territory. They can monitor and keep an eye on all the bad actors who are operating here right now.
Correct, Eric. If you actually look all the way up to the Hermon Mountain, on one of the peaks, which is, by the way, the highest peak is in Syria, but on the Israeli peak, you may be able to locate these facilities. This is an Israeli intelligence base, and that base is deeply looking into Damascus.
Wow. What's Iran's goal here in Syria, and why are they at Israel's doorstep right now, just a few miles away? Hey, Avi, we could walk and be in these villages controlled by Iran and Assad in 25 minutes from where we're standing right now, and this is Israeli territory.
Right now, as we are looking at both Iraq and Syria, we could see there are Iranian-backed Shiite militias, both Iraqis, as well as the Hezbollah, Afghans and others, who operate in this land corridor stretching all the way from Iran all the way to the Mediterranean. The Iranian regime, as far as it's concerned, this is the ultimate dream of the Iranian regime, to create a land corridor, a presence on the ground through the use of proxies. The situation in Iraq and the war in Syria basically gave the Iranian regime a golden opportunity to do that, and they have been unfortunately quite successfully doing that.
They have the base in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah on Israel's border.
Correct.
Now they want to establish another front against Israel right where we're standing on the Golan. How does Israel counteract that? What has Israel been doing to battle against that Iranian influence at its doorstep?
Israel sent very clear signals to the Iranian regime and the Hezbollah as well, both diplomatically and non-diplomatically, basically saying very clearly the Golan Heights is off the limit. One of the interesting aspects in the context of that is that the presence of Russia in Syria, as of now, plays significantly positive role as far as Israel is concerned, because Vladimir Putin is tuned to the Israeli strategic interest. Israel will not stand and will not tolerate the creation of yet another front in the Golan Heights, either by directly or indirectly forces that are subdued to the Iranian control.
I want to talk about that more in our next segment, Avi. As you said, the Golan is a red line for Israel.
Correct.
No, we will not allow Iran to establish another terror satellite in the Golan. Russia's a wild card. We're going to talk about that after the break with Avi Melamed, our good friend. Russia, Syrian refugees, and how it affects you in America. How the chaos here in Syria affects everyone watching this show right now. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel from the Syrian border with our good friend, national security expert, intelligence expert, Middle East expert, Avi Melamed. Don't move.
I've just returned from Washington, D.C., where I had the honor of meeting with the President and Vice President of the United States of America. God has given Christians United for Israel unprecedented favor with our national leaders, and I fully expect to see God use CUFI in a supernatural way to protect the state of Israel and the Jewish people in the years to come. We need every CUFI member to come to Washington, D.C. for the summit on July 17th and 18th. This summit is going to be one for the history books. You can register right now for only $75, and our operators are standing by to assist you with making reservations. For Zion's sake, come to Washington, D.C. and help CUFI help the President defend Israel.
Avi, as we walk, you see behind us a tank from either, who knows, the Six-Day War in 1967, the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The tank behind us, an Israeli tank, been left there, kind of a memento, I guess, memorial from that conflict. But since we're in range of Damascus, Avi, I think this is a good place to kind of tie it all together. Look, you talked about the profound impact on the region, on Israel, of this conflict in Syria. Let's take a bit of a global view now, if we can. Number one, I want to ask you about President Trump's recent Tomahawk missile strikes in Syria. Was that a game changer?
Yes, it is a game changer. The most important essence of that signal is very clear. The United States is back in the Syrian scene. The meaning of that any kind of future arrangement in Syria must take into consideration the strategic interest of the United States of America. It is not taken for given, because that was not the case in the time of Obama.
Yeah, Avi, we couldn't say that over the past 8 years, I'm sorry. Assad, Iran, Vladimir Putin's Russia, they were doing whatever they wanted to do. They didn't fear repercussions from the U.S., but those Tomahawk missile strikes send a message, maybe a new sheriff in town?
Yes.
You know, the U.S. left a vacuum in the region, Avi, for 8 years, and that vacuum was filled by the worst actors in the world, and hopefully that Tomahawk missile is a game changer. Okay, that brings us to number two, Russia. Vladimir Putin has a presence here in the Middle East for the first time in decades. The Russians are here in a major way. What's their goal here? What's their game?
Well, you know, Eric, if there is a winner in that terrible, tragic scene called Syria, it is Vladimir Putin. Because Putin, in a relatively low investment, you know, he was killing a couple of thousands of Syrians and he was ruining a couple of cities. He couldn't care less. He basically got himself a stronghold in Syria, and Putin is here to stay. As far as Putin is concerned, the cards that he holds in the context of Syria are enormously significant, not only because it enables Russia an access to the eastern basin of the Mediterranean with everything that comes along with that.
Warm water port.
Yes, but it also provides Putin with a very, very significant bargaining cards in the context of Eastern Europe. Putin is in Syria to stay. Putin holds the cards to any kind of political arrangement in Syria. President Trump understands that, the Turks understand that, the Iranians understand that, Saudi Arabia understands that, the Syrians understand it.
It makes me shudder to think, Avi, that Russia, which is a nuclear powerhouse, no longer a superpower, but look, a massive, massive nuclear arsenal, is shoulder to shoulder with Islamic terrorists. The Iranian regime and Hezbollah aligned with them. That's a scary thought. Okay, number 3, last thought here, the refugee crisis. Now, the Syrian refugee crisis obviously has touched the West in a major way. We've seen, look, ISIS sympathizers come out of there and everything else, carry out attacks in the West. Tell us about that refugee crisis ongoing, what's the latest there, and how it affects the West, why we should care over there.
Well, in fact, Eric, if you just look down there beyond the fence, which is very close, you could see these white tents scattered all around. These are tents populated by Syrians who basically flee from the regular homes, trying to find a shelter from the war. This is, of course, a small example. When we talk about the phenomenon of the Syrian refugees and dislocated, roughly speaking, we are talking about some 5 million Syrian refugees outside of Syria, in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey, and elsewhere. We are talking about 7 or 8 million Syrians dislocated inside Syria. Syria is ruined now.
A country that had been 21 million people,
23 million
over half
people.
of the country is now dispersed.
Correct.
23, I'm sorry.
Correct.
And you just said it, Avi, Syria is ruined. Syria has ceased to exist as a nation state.
One of the things that we should be alarmed of is that there are many of these Syrians who flee Syria, and they hold to a large extent the West responsible for the tragedy that happens to them. The meaning of that is that we don't know the exact number of people that are basically what I call the ticking bomb, meaning the people that may go to the West and at some point down the road will be fueled with the sentiments of anger and rage, and that could be manifested in a ways that nobody can really predict. This is something that we have to be very much aware of, and mostly because of the fact that on a daily basis, people from different parts of the Arab world, and of course Syria, are exposed to terrible sceneries coming from Syria, which most of the people in the West are not exposed to. Nobody knows what the impact of those sceneries on the sense of the feeling of anger and feelings of revenge among those Syrians.
And then they come to the West and they lash out in places like London, Brussels, Paris, and the rest. Avi, what you're telling us is that what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East.
Coming up, what is the end game in Syria? We discuss it after the break. Don't move. It's time to learn the truth about Israel. If you want to know the real story about Israel, then you need to watch Israel Through the Looking Glass, a movie that confronts the accusations against Israel with the reality on the ground. Witness with your own eyes and ears the contrast between Israel's accusers and the true stories you've never heard.
How far away are we now from Gaza?
From this point to the border, less than a mile.
28,000 rockets?
Rocket in 12 years.
Israeli Arabs have the same, by law, civic rights that any other citizen in the state of Israel has.
Call the number on your screen right now or visit the website and order your free DVD of Israel Through the Looking Glass.
This is what your teachers tell you, right? Teachers, yeah?
Israel needs you to know the truth because the truth is our greatest weapon. Find out what you need to know so you can stand up and speak out for Zion's sake. The DVD is absolutely free. Order right now.
look, this Syrian conflict has stretched on now for 6.5 years, 300, 400,000 people killed, women, children, thousands and thousands of civilians. Is there an end game? Where's this heading?
To make a long story short, I believe that the agreement or arrangement will be achieved with the participation of the United States, Turkey, Russia, the Saudis. The essence of this agreement or arrangement must include two basic conditions. One, the brutal dictatorship of the Alawites in Syria for half a century must come to an end.
Assad's got to go.
It will go one way or another.
Yeah.
A new political system must be established, such a one that will represent the fact that majority of the Syrians are Sunnis. This is one basic condition. And the other one is the presence of Iranian forces and their proxies, Hezbollah, Iranians, Shiites, Afghan Shiites, Iraqi Shiites, and so forth in Syria must come to an end.
Assad's got to go, Iran's got to go. Something tells me it's going to be a whole lot harder to dislodge Iran. Stay tuned, I would say. And if we had a major overriding message today, Avi, I guess we kept coming back to Iran, and that poisonous influence in the region. Avi, thank you so much, my friend. What a day here in the Golan. Real quick, my friend, all the time, avimelamed.com. You see the URL on your screen, folks. The book is Inside the Middle East. Go now, pick it up, amazon.com. You're hearing one of the top Middle East experts, analysts in the world. You heard him today, Inside the Middle East. Thank you for joining us this week on the Watchman from the Golan on the Syrian border, one of the hottest war zones in the world. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.